Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and we're going to talk vintage today, specifically how to sideboard with Squee Hollow Vine against the top 10 most popular vintage decks. Now I'm going to give a warning with this initially. Squee Hollow Vine is a very focused deck. Against most matchups, there's actually not a lot of sideboarding because against most matchups, the deck just wants to do what it does and kill their opponent and counter their spells. But against some, the sideboard is pretty huge. So let's talk about it. So I've already done a deck tech on Squee Hollow Vine. Basically, it's a deck centered around Bazaar Baghdad, and then cheating cards onto the battlefield like Root Wall's Vengevine and a Hollow One, and then protecting with Force of Negation, Mindbreak Trap, Force of Will, and refilling our hand constantly with Squee and Master of Death. So if you're interested in a more in-depth guide, check out my channel. I already posted a deck tech to this deck. So the most popular deck in Vintage is the blue Tinker decks. These blue Tinker decks run a lot of the restricted cards in the format to eventually tinker into Bolas' Citadel and cheat a bunch of cards onto the battlefield, or Sphinx of the Steel Wind and just destroy us, frankly. Sphinx of the Steel Wind is really, really, really bad for us. And I kind of want to talk about each one of these cards first. First off, Surgical Extraction is for graveyard decks and decks that are playing a specific card we're terrified of that maybe hit the graveyard first. Leyline of the Void is for graveyard decks. Fury is for decks that have creatures that we're really afraid of. Ghost Quarter is for decks without basic lands or very few basic lands that we try to destroy their lands, or have lands that we're really afraid of, like Urza Saga. Karakas is mostly for Merit Liege, but also for legendary creatures, especially decks that cheat legendary creatures in the battlefield. And Petrified Field is for decks that have Wasteland and things like that. So Tinker we are already a little boarded for, because the best thing you can do against Tinker is like play Chalice of the Void, aggro them out as fast as possible, and have things like Mindbreak Trap, Force of Negation, and Force of Will. Generally, the Tinker decks don't run Wasteland or Strip Mine because they need their colors. So we don't need the Petrified Field. I do like Ghost Quarter, though, because it's really important that we kill Urza Saga, even though we have Wasteland, Strip Mine, Force of Vigor. Some of the decks also play an island and a plains. Some Tinker decks don't, so you might just get people with Ghost Quarter. And Ghost Quarter deals with Tabernacle, which Tabernacle is just insane against us. And because these decks don't really run away to deal with Bazaar Baghdad, we don't really need Noxious Revival in our deck. So we're going to be looking for ways to replace it, and we can replace that with the Furies in our sideboard. One additional way that I sideboard is I actually only think Chalice of the Void is good on the play. So on the draw, I like cutting this Chalice of the Void and also bringing in Pyrokinesis. On the play, I like keeping Chalice of the Void in, because if we Chalice for 0, they don't get to play any of their Moxes, and they just kind of lose. But this is how I sideboard generally against Tinker. The second most popular deck in Vintage is Mono White Initiative. Now, hopefully, obviously, we bring in our Pyrokinesis and all of our Furies. We want as much removal as possible against the Initiative deck, so we can take the Initiative and then just keep it. And they also play Wastelands and Strip Mine, so we want to make sure we protect our Bazaar Baghdad with Petrified Field. But there is actually no card that we're like super afraid of specifically, especially any card that might hit the graveyard before it hits the battlefield, so we are keeping Surgical Extractions out. But some cards are just bad against this deck, like Mental Misstep is really, really bad, and Force of Negation is really, really bad. Force Negation is bad because they don't really run non-creature spells that we're afraid of. Their non-creature spells are mostly Moxes. They do play Swords of Plowshares in the post board, but I think having main deck cards like Migrate Track and Force of Will kind of deal with those. In addition, again, similar to the Tinker deck, especially in the post board games, I also like siding out a Chalice of the Void when I'm on the draw. And so when I do that, we just keep in one of the Force of Negations. Mindbreak Trap against most decks is going to act not like deal with the Storm decks or whatever. Mindbreak Trap is going to act as like a turn 1 counter spell, because most decks are just go like land, Mox, Homie, and we can counter the Homie with one card with Mindbreak Trap. But Force of Negation, being able to snipe a Swords of Plowshares or something like that might end up being relevant. At least it can do something where Chalice of the Void does basically nothing on the draw. So that's how I sideboard generally, or this, against Initiative. The third most popular deck is Paradoxical Outcome. This is sort of like the Tinker deck. They play the Tinker combos as well, but they play way, way more artifacts, including Grim Monolith. And the way that they're trying to kill is either with Bolas' Citadel or the Time Vault Manifold Key combo. Now, against this deck, Ghost Quarter is really strong because we can take out their Ancient Tomb effects, and Urza Saga, both very important. They don't play any Wastelands or anything like that, though. And frankly, we are just trying to kill as fast as humanly possible. So we're bringing in the Ghost Quarter. And actually, I think Chalice of the Void is really good even on the draw, so we're not going to take that out at all. And we're bringing out Fury. Fury doesn't really kill anything. I mean, Phyrexian Metamorph, it can kill, so maybe they'll Phyrexian Metamorph one of our guys. I'm not super worried about that, though. Like, I'm totally okay with that. And that's how we just sideboard against Paradoxical Outcome. Doomsday is the 4th most popular deck, and it's a deck that is trying to cast Doomsday, put 5 cards on their deck, and then draw out those 5 cards and cast Thassa's Oracle to win the game for its you win the game text. And it's kind of a blue-black control deck, kind of plays like a blue-black storm deck. But one thing that it doesn't do is play a ton of Moxes. It plays the on-color Moxes and Black Lotus, which isn't really enough to care for Chalice of the Void for 0, which is the only Chalice of the Void that we can really do. Also, they don't play any creatures because they're just trying to combo in that way, and their combo is a creature at instant speed, which even if we could kill it, if they have 0 cards in their deck, they still win the game. We're siding in Ghost Quarter, mostly because of Tabernacle. It means we can still win the game even after they Tabernacle us. And I'm a fan of Pyrokinesis. Man, we're normally discarding this card, but there are some worlds and some hands that they try to cast Thassa's Oracle when they have like 1 card in their deck. And then if you can Pyrokinesis at instant speed and kill the Thassa's Oracle, you just win the game because they don't get to do their thing. So because no other cards in our sideboard are good in this matchup, for those very, very corner cases, I do bring in Pyrokinesis. And this is how I sideboard against Doomsday. The 5th most popular deck is Dredge. So it's the other graveyard deck of the format. They are a basic Dredge deck. They are similar to us in that the only land that they play is Bazaar of Baghdad. They mulligan into Bazaar of Baghdad and then kind of go off with that, with discarding Dredge cards and dredging a whole bunch. That being said, Ghost Quarter is obviously great because if we can deal Bazaar of Baghdad, it's possible we can win the game. Surgical Extraction is just insane because we can get rid of the stuff that is dredging in their graveyard, and obviously Leyline of Void is obviously insane as well. Some things that are actually not very good against this deck are any of our counterspells or our Chalice of the Void. All of these cards really don't do anything. They're returning things from their graveyard after they activate Bazaar of Baghdad. There's very little spells that are actually cast. So we have even more cards we can bring in, and bringing in the Furies and the Pyrokinesis are all very good because we can kind of clear the way for our creatures even after they combo and bring their homies back. Now we keep in Force of Vigor because they also play Leyline of the Void in their sideboard, and we need to be able to kind of like win the game through Leyline of the Void. And they also play Strip Mine and Wasteland in their sideboard, so we need to keep in Noxious Revival so we can get back Bazaar of Baghdad and continue doing our thing. And we are also bringing out Mental Misstep because, again, these counter spells aren't good because they aren't actually casting any spells, which means we bring in Petrified Field for the same reason we're keeping in Noxious Revival, again, for those Wastelands and Strip Mines. So it's a 14-card sideboard against Dredge. The 6th most popular deck in Vintage is Oath of Druids, and in my humble opinion, I think this is a really bad matchup for us. Oath of Druids is a deck that is kind of like a mono blue-ish control-y deck that plays like the Tinker combo as well as Bulls the Citadel and all of that stuff, but also plays Oath of Druids, and the Oath of Druids basically says when your opponent has a creature on the battlefield, you get to reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal a creature and put it on the battlefield. In a lot more words, that's what it says. So in a deck like this, where we always have creatures on the battlefield, they just get to put a creature on the battlefield for free, which normally is Atraxa. Sometimes it's other fun stuff like out of the sideboard Sphinx of the Steel Wind, which is just disgusting for us. So our goal is to kill them before they actually are able to do that thing. So I personally like bringing in Caracas because sometimes we can just return their homie to their hand after they combo and we can still win the game. But they don't run Wastelands, they don't run Strip Mines, so we're not afraid of stuff for Petrified Field, and they don't really have lands we're super afraid of, so I don't like bringing in Ghost Quarter, and really they don't have creatures we're really afraid of, so I don't like Fury or Pyrokinesis. And so I'm just bringing in Caracas and taking out Fury. And the reason I'm taking out Fury instead of Noxious Revival, especially since Noxious Revival is also pretty bad, is because we can pitch Noxious Revival to Force of Vigor to be able to stop them from actually doing the Oath of Druids thing. And this is how we sideboard against Oath of Druids. And like I said, it is a rough one. The 7th most popular deck in Vintage is the Mirror Match. In the Mirror Match, we're going to sideboard really similar to Dredge with a couple small differences. We're bringing in our Surgical We're bringing in our Surgical Extractions and our Leyline of the Voids, very obviously, or like, hating the graveyard stuff. Like, these are the obvious things we bring in. I also like Petrified Field and Ghost Quarter. Petrified Field to stop them from Wasteland and Strip Mining or stuff. Ghost Quarter to be able to just have another Wasteland for their Bazaar of Baghdad. Cards that are straight up bad against them, I don't like Force of Negation or Mindbreak Trap. Force of Negation maybe can stop them from counterspelling our things, because sometimes, a counterspell on a hollow one or something like that is super annoying. But that's not where I want to be in this matchup. And Mindbreak Trap very rarely ever counters anything or is anything that you're not just pitching to Force of Will. Mental Misstep also just counters nothing except for the Root Wallas, and that's not where we want to be with that. Which, that being said, I really like the Furies to be able to just kill our opponent's stuff, because one big difference between this deck and Dredge is that this deck has a really hard time recurring anything from our graveyard besides Vengevine, so killing something and then it's gone, and Fury matches up really well against Hollow One. In addition, Chalice of the Void does literally nothing in this matchup. And because we only have one other playset of cards to pitch to Force of Will ends up not being that good. Force of Will is fine against specifically Hollow One, against nothing else though. So I like just taking out counter magic, bringing in all of these guys. And this is where I'm at in the mirror match. The 8th most popular deck is Jeskai Control. Jeskai Control is kind of exactly what you think it is, right? Just draw spells, kill spells, normally trying to kill with like Regavan, Dreadhorde Arcanist, sometimes Monastery Mentor, things like that. I like Petrified Field in the matchup because they do one Wasteland and Strip Mine. They have no lands I care about, though. Nothing in the graveyard I care about as well. But they do kill with creatures, so I actually like Fury and Pyrokinesis quite a bit. I don't like Chalice of the Void because they don't run a ton of Moxes, so it's not actually going to stop anything. It's fine against Mishra's Bauble, but that's like it. And because they don't run a lot of Moxes, Mindbreak Trap ends up being much worse as well. So that's how I sideboard against Control. The 9th most popular deck is Aggro Shops. So Aggro Shops is a artifact deck that plays a bunch of artifact rampy cards, some cards that sometimes lock us out of the game, like Sphere of Resistance and like Thorn of Amethyst sometimes, and just is aggroing us out with these like kind of hateberry artifact cards. So Aggro Shops, we obviously want Fury and Pyrokinesis because, aggro or whatever. I'm a fan of Petrified Field because of Wasteland and Strip Mine, and I'm a fan of Ghost Quarter because they don't actually run any basics, and being able to snipe an Ancient Tomb or an Urza Saga feels really good. We're going to be taking out the Mental Misstep because it doesn't really counter anything of note. And this is one of the few matchups that we like everything else in our deck. So we're going to be cutting the Master of Deaths and a single Blazing Root Wall. I say Blazing Root Wall because it's really important we have things to pitch to Force of Vigor in this matchup. That being said, I'm also a strong believer that we cut Chalice of the Void on the draw because we only cared about Moxes. So in that sense, we're bringing a Blazing Root Wall and taking out Chalice of the Void. And this is how I sideboard against Aggro Shops. And the 10th most popular deck and the final deck that we're going to learn how to sideboard against is the Prison Shops deck. So this is a little bit different, but it's focused on just locking us out of the game entirely and then winning with the Time Vault Mana Vault Key combo. Against Prison Shops, we just don't need to bring in the Pyrokinesis and Fury because it's not going to be killing anything to speak of. But we still need the Ghost Quarter, still need the Petrified Field, and we still need a lot of hope because this is another rough matchup. Mental Misstep doesn't counter anything of note, or at least not enough things for us to care about. It's like literally 4 cards in the deck. And we're going to be cutting the Fury. And that's how I sideboard against Prison Shops. So there you have how to sideboard against the 10 most popular decks in Vintage with Squee Hollow Vine, my favorite deck in Vintage. It is so aggressive, so awesome, so synergistic. If you like this video and want to see more videos like this, more sideboard guides, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description, especially on Twitch where I stream most nights. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.